I know that it must just gladden your heart to see a bunch of demonstrators at a immigration customs enforcement facility blocking the path of a guard and then are complaining about the fact that he sought to do what is within his rights, which is to proceed to park his vehicle and go to work.
Well, exactly. Look, first of all, there's a lot of protesters nationwide showing up for ICE facilities, and it makes you wonder if they even got a job. But besides this, they got to understand ICE employees, especially our contractors that run our facilities for us, they're on edge, Lou. And I don't want to happen in this incident, but our employees are on edge.
So that was Lou Dobbs with former ICE director Thomas Homan, basically saying, "Hey, man, look, hey, our agents, they're on edge. So if they decide to run over protesters, well, they're completely justified." Oh, so now this basically happened on Wednesday night, where there was a group of young Jewish protesters. They were from a group called Never Again Action. They decided to protest outside the Wyatt Detention Facility in Central Falls, Rhode Island. So now, in the midst of their protest, they blocked an entrance to an ICE facility, and where there was this man who tried to, get in to go to work, basically ran in full bore into these protesters. And there's video, of course, showing that. Now, again, during the video, the protesters surround the car. They chanted shame. And then, in response, the man accelerated, driving the car straight through the protesters, and then injuring several of them. In fact, one of the leaders, Mr. Rugenberg, said that two of the protesters who had been struck, were brought to the hospital. One had suffered a fractured leg and back injuries. So that's the result of this. And they're saying, oh, no, here's what we're going to do. If we feel scared at all as an ICE agent or as a prison guard or whatever, and we don't like these protests and we're scared, then that gives us license to run you over. Now, I don't think that's how that's supposed to work. So now, again, that's one of the main problems. And here you have, obviously, Lou Dobbs, one of the president's biggest defenders, saying, oh, no, that's fine. Hey, man, he just had to go to work. He was just going to work. And these very dangerous, very scary, peaceful protesters. Did I say peaceful? I didn't mean peaceful. They surrounded the truck. So that gave me 100% license to go and run them over. But they weren't violent. They weren't dangerous. Yes, they were chanting shame because guess what? What we're doing right now in those facilities is shameful. We're keeping people in basically jails, in baby jails. Okay. And so, yeah, them actually doing a protest is not licensed for you to run them down. So this is horrible. Now, what else is horrible is here we had the police response, right? So now the police apparently did not intervene. The man has not been arrested at all for doing actual bodily harm and injury to some of these protesters. He just went in, he went right to work. And not only that, but just moments after, several other prison guards approached the protesters. And well, did they help? Again, there were people that were injured that had to go to the hospital. Did these prison guards then go try to help people up? No, they pepper sprayed them right afterwards. Come on, man. You didn't offer to help the injured. No, instead, you did more damage. Now, of course, the right, is immediately going to say, but he was in danger. He had to do it. Again, I can understand being scared, right? But that doesn't give you the right to run people over, especially if they're not being violent, because this is a nonviolent protest. But Jeff, you don't understand. This protest was super inconvenient. I mean, you literally stopped a man going to work. I mean, how dare you? Well, that's kind of the point. Protests are not supposed to be accommodating or convenient, or else it's not a good protest. And look, let me put this into perspective, right? America actually has some of the most weak sauce protests that we can ever think of, compared to the rest of the world. In France, they literally set things on fire. if the government even dares to do something that people don't like, they set stuff on fire. Here in America, again, we have the most weak sauce, super nice, let's get a permit protests. There are soccer fans that are far more dangerous protesters than the protesters here in America. And look, these protests make sense because what our government is doing right now is caging children. And look, now since this happened and you got it on video, there were a lot of outrage, right? Again, Aaron Rugenberg, right? He's the organizer of the group and a former Rhode Island state representative. He talked to BuzzFeed. He told them this. He very clearly and deliberately drove a truck into a line of demonstrators. For all we know, he's there now working with complete accountable authority over immigrant detainees. He said if they're willing to do that to us, we can't imagine the violence the ICE detainees behind those walls may be subject to every single day. And that is, look, that's a great point. If they're willing to run over Jewish protesters, which, by the way, nobody's saying how anti-Semitic is this guy. Nobody's bringing out that charge, right? But I mean, think about that. If they're willing to do that to protesters, what are they doing to the people inside? Come on, we've seen all sorts of terrible abuse that these ICE agents, that border agents as well, inflict on the people that are supposed to be in their care. That's why so many people have died under Border Patrol custody. And I understand that some people, come there and they're, dehydrated and they're, hurt or they're sick from the travel. I understand that. But then there's also negligence. There's also treating people as if they're subhuman, putting people in places called the fridge or the dog pound, right? Where, children are kept in open air cages outside in the Arizona heat, or throwing people in places that are with the ambient temperature of 55 degrees with a little metal foil blanket or aluminum blanket. I mean, come on. Not allowing them to have, things like soap and toothpaste, which, by the way, thankfully the Trump administration lost their case because they were arguing that, no, those migrants don't deserve that stuff that would help have a safe and sanitary condition. They argued that we shouldn't have to give them soap, toothbrushes, or beds. I mean, that is ridiculous and absolutely horrifying to see the government take the side of, hey, man, we're going to throw these people in prison, and then we're going to allow disease to fester. We're going to allow people to be dirty. We're going to allow people to, not be taken care of, even though it is our choice to have taken them and put them into these conditions. We don't have to take care of them, though. No, that's horrible. That's awful. And running over protesters, also horrible. And I cannot believe that we're actually doing this, that our ICE agents are doing. Not only that, but there are people on Fox News that are literally defending this crap. Now, look, I guess you could defend ICE, sort of, without having to defend stuff like this, because this is fascist stuff. I mean, fascists run over peaceful protesters. And then the cops, instead of protecting the protesters, then do nothing. They just sit there and they watch while other prison guards, come out and pepper spray the protesters after they got ran over. And again, the police response, worse, right? Never Again Action organizer Amy Anthony said this of the police, quote, "They were not very involved. I have to say, they didn't approach the truck or the driver, and I didn't see them speak with the driver at all. Police did not take statements from injured people, even though many of them asked to give them." You know why? It's because they don't actually care. They don't care at all. The people on Fox News, they don't care that we nearly had another Heather Heyer incident. In fact, they're cheering this on. And they're saying, well, obviously, you would be scared if a bunch of people, Jewish protesters, surrounded you too. No, all they want to do is defend the Trump establishment against the people. They want to defend the terrible things that ICE does, which we don't need to be doing. And by the way, we don't need ICE. We have Border Patrol, but Border Patrol is infested by racists. So what we need to do, we need to get rid of ICE, dismantle it. We never needed it. We didn't need it back when it was instituted in 2000s. We also need to completely gut and retrain Border Patrol agents. Right now, there's a Facebook group with tens of thousands of current and former Border Patrol agents that are saying some of the most racist, vile things. Get rid of them all. Eliminate them and actually bring in a Border Patrol force, hire a Border Patrol force that is completely new and retrain them to actually treat these people with humanity. And then, obviously, we need to create a humane immigration system that doesn't treat these people as if they're, second-class humans or subhuman, but that we actually treat them with dignity and respect as we would expect to be treated. Because who knows? Maybe one day we'll be the refugees. We'll be the migrants. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.